My name is Annie Pedret. I'm an associate professor at Seoul National University in the design department. There are tangible boundaries and intangible boundaries. And, the DMZ is a tangible boundary, but then there are social intangible boundaries, and then there's other more conceptual or ontological boundaries. And it's important because these frames determine the field of what is possible, the field of potentiality. And if we're only working within a certain frame, especially today with the kind of complex problems and emerging problems that we really don't know how to handle, might be solutions outside of our frames that we can't access because we are unconsciously holding ourselves within a certain framework. And so I think boundaries are much more interesting to look at this time, much more important, and actually much more powerful in setting us up for how we can deal with the kinds of problems we're dealing with today. It started with the boundary between North and South Korea. When I moved to Korea, I thought, well, that's the elephant in the room, and what can design do? What can architecture do? What can space design do to deal with this huge, complex problem, which are the ones that I love to deal with? I have a studio called the Spatial Strategies Lab here at SNU, and we just said, well, we have to imagine. And so what we started with was imagining Pyongyang in 2050 in a unified Korea. We had to kind of imagine different scenarios for what unification could look like, because that would have a profound impact on what the city would look like. And so that's where the beginning with intangible boundaries started. So that ended up in a book called Pyongyang 2050 Spatial Futures. So students did some fabulous work, Roller Coaster City, where they proposed that the way to change the memories of the North Koreans and even ourselves were to use public spaces by putting in a roller coaster that would give people an extreme experience that would then allow them to escape, at least temporarily, before landing back into this. And then changing, like there have been many post-socialist cities that have done kind of ludic functions after regime fall. But we let everything, we have the full spectrum from very subtle architectural interventions that wanted to preserve it as Pyongyang as a kind of museum of monuments and new monuments, that would add layers and layers as ideologies changed. You would just add layers to this very kind of extreme, let's just put this urban scale roller coaster that goes up around the Juche Tower and down, and then around Kim Il-sung Square, and then down from the Rumyong Hotel, so that we're using the monuments. That was, and there were others, but that was how it began. What I'd like to share is a 3-part learning process, each one with a different kind of learning, because fundamentally this is an exercise, whether we're looking at another person, a user or a client, or we are looking at ourselves. These complex problems have to be solved with multiple viewpoints. But before we even start, we have to know what our viewpoints are. And so that's something in the design process that I want to begin to explore. So how do we adapt or learn from what exists, or invent new processes and practices to make us more aware of what we're doing?